Hello and welcome to Shuffling Notes, where we discuss albums, songs, artists, and just overanalyze music in general. So if that's your jam, then stay tuned. If it isn't, then hang around. It might be your jam. I mean, you clicked on the video anyway. So I'm your co-host Prankit.
And I'm your co-host Razi. And today we'll be discussing Maroon 5, I think.
Yes, their debut studio album, Songs About Jane, that came out in 2002. So, just a bit of background. I'm not sure if you know, Razi. Before Maroon 5 or Maroon 5, they were known as, I think it's pronounced like Cara's Flowers. And and they were still in high school, I think, or college, and they didn't really get a lot of success back then. And then they sort of rebranded themselves as Maroon 5. They added a new member. And then, so this was the debut studio album for Maroon 5, but they have had albums out before as Cara's Flowers, but they didn't really get that much success. I thought
was there a reason? Was there a reason behind the name switch?
I'm not sure. I found a video online. It's like a sort of a B-roll recording of when they were working in the studio, and they're trying to come up with names. And one of them is like, how about Maroon something? The Maroon, the new Maroons, and they're trying to sort of just bounce ideas. But I'm not sure. I'm guessing because they didn't get as much success before. I think this was sort of a rebranding and perhaps maybe a different attitude to music in general. And they did add a new band member as well. So, I mean, there's that. And one more thing just to mention, I'm not sure if you know the guitarist, the lead guitarist, what's his name? James Valentine. He and John Mayer were good friends from before, and they've toured together. And John Mayer has said some stuff about this album. We'll get into it later, of some specific songs. But I didn't know about that at all. That Maroon 5 and John Mayer have a connection. I mean, I guess as we get into it, there is some, I guess, in terms of themes and the content of the songs, there is some similarity, you could say, to Room for Squares in the sense of what the songs are about. But we'll get into it. Yeah. So, Songs About Jane, it's, every song in this album, Adam Levine said, has at least one line that's about Jane, someone he dated in the past and I suppose served as a muse to this album. Is there anything you want to say before we sort of get into the track lists?
That's all I read about the pre-visualization of the album. Like it was Jane, who was Adam Levine's ex-girlfriend, ex-lover, ex-partner, who he is allegedly still in good talking terms with. And
I read as well. They're like still good friends or so on. It's interesting. There's a whole album about her. And I think. I mean, I remember one of the interviews, Adam Levine said something like it was, unless I'm misremembering, it was more of a one-sided thing. Like he saw her and then, he was really sort of fascinated by her. And then he sort of wrote a song for her and played it somewhere. And then it was almost, he was sort of chasing after her as much as, more than just a sort of a normal relationship. Let's get into the track list. So the first song we have is Harder to Breathe. And, the title of the song is very apt. It's sort of, I guess, you're suffocating in a relationship and you're trying to sort of break out of it.
There's just the music of Harder to Breathe is like, I really respect that kind of, it's giving the feeling of breathlessness.
Yeah.
Where it's part of the rhythm.
Sounds in the background as well. Yeah.
It's like the part of the beat, part of the rhythm. And like that's a really good name for such a song. And it just, and obviously it's about how a relationship gets caged, maybe.
Yeah, and you would, I don't know if you know about this song. I didn't initially, and I was surprised to find this out, that this song, originally they hadn't written this song for the album, but the record label, they kept sort of asking them to write another song. They were like, you need one more song for this album. And so Adam Levine sort of wrote it, all the band, they wrote it in a lot of frustration and under a lot of pressure, and that's why the song has a bit of that frustration. And so I think, Adam Levine said, like, the lyrics, as much as it is about, his past relationship with Jane and so on, it's also about that moment and that relationship at that moment with the label, because he was kind of feeling suffocated by the label because they kept asking him to add another song. And it was very much last minute. It was like at the 11th hour, they wanted more songs. And he said that it was the last track. I was just pissed. I wanted to make a record, and the label was applying a lot of pressure. But I'm glad they did. And I feel like it very much comes out in the music and in the song, doesn't it? Like, there is that pressure and tension.
Yeah. I mean, all of the songs have that drastic pull in them, probably.
Yeah. And it fits in very well with the album as well, this song, it doesn't feel like it's a last-minute add-on.
Yeah,
I mean... track on their album.
That's how it starts. And, whatever you do, you go through that and into the rest of the songs.
Yeah. So, let's move on to the next track. That's called This Love. Again, a really nice track. I guess about a breakup of a relationship, sort of. I mean, this is, I think, a lot of the lyrics in this album, and Maroon 5 in general back in the day, a lot of the lyrics were kind of like you could call steamy, racy.
Of course.
But yeah, so this song in particular got censored on MTV. Some of the lyrics.
I read that too. Yeah, I read that too.
Yeah,
and it said like the critics were not able to catch it as well.
Yeah. Well, initially, they didn't catch the lyrics. So, there's like innuendos in there.
Yeah.
And then later on, retroactively, they're like, no, let's move that out. John Mayer, so he's spoken about this song in particular. He said, I got a quote here with me. It said, "Once I heard This Love, it was a light fused stand back kind of situation. It's one of those perfect songs you always hope to write." So, I mean, I think John Mayer was a big fan of this song. And you can sort of, like I said, initially, there are parallels to the sort of things that John Mayer wrote in his Room for Squares in terms of like relationships and basing them on your past relationships, basing the songs on that. True. And there's, I guess, some sort of crossover going on.
True. The song also is a lot like, it's like a soliloquy. Mm-hmm. Like, a monologue of him sort of guaranteeing himself of these steamy moments as he sings along.
Yeah, I mean, great song. I think the first two tracks, I've heard them so many times. And interesting, I think as we go, the first half of the album, and as you'll see, I think it's probably more heard of and more played than I feel like the second half. But we'll get into that. So the next song we have is Shiver. What did you think? Is there anything specifically that jumped out to you?
Well, after the first two songs, given that you listen to it in a single go, so after the first two songs, it kind of takes like a different turn in terms of music. Yeah. Like, it starts softer while the first two songs are like, they really get on to you.
Like a hard start. They kind of throw you into it immediately.
Yeah. And this one sort of, it rubs it in. It's a slow song.
Yeah, and I think in this song, the lyrics, obviously there is that one-sided sort of love aspect. Right. But, going back to the whole thing I was saying about, him seeing Jane at a place and then, being fascinated and sort of chasing after her. This song does have, I want to say, like a stalkerish vibe to it. There's like, particularly he says like, till I'm under your skin, it's not, it's obviously there is an innuendo going on, but under your skin usually means, they're like, and it feels a bit obsessive. There's like a psychotic vibe to this song, and it's very sort of self-aware of that. It's called Shiver. And it's like, he's having withdrawals without the person, which is, again, goes back to that, like, he's shivering. It goes back to that, like, obsessive thing. So I thought that was interesting. It's definitely not just like a love song, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think it's about someone leaving or someone you're scared they leave.
Yeah. Like, some, like an obsessive relationship, or like you have a lot of insecurities and you're constantly sort of questioning things. Right? There's a lot of that going on. Interesting song. And then moving on from that, we've got, I guess, the star of the album, She Will Be Loved. I think probably everyone's heard this song everywhere, at some point, somewhere.
It really caught on in Australia, is what I read. Like Australia
Yeah, I
had
mean,
it
this
on the
song
top
was
song.
big.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
this
yeah.
album in general was really big as a debut album. It really threw Maroon 5 into like the spotlight. But
True.
particularly, I think this song was just everyone was singing it. And I mean, to this day, if you start playing the guitar riff, if I pull out my guitar and I just start playing the riff, people instantly know what song it is and they'll start
True.
singing along. It's very iconic. And
True.
I've been a fan of this song and I've seen a lot of their sort of like live performances and things, and they've spoken about how they sort of wrote the song quite a lot. Like I think it was like James, like Valentine, I think, was just started sort of playing a riff on the guitar, and it kind of built
Right.
from that riff.
Right.
They sort of Adam Levine sort of came up with a tune, then they sort of slowly came up with lyrics. So
Mm-hmm.
the whole song is very reliant on that guitar riff because it's
Mm-hmm.
really it developed out of that riff. And
Right.
there's with any successful song they have released different versions of the song, and there's like multiple music videos, which is I guess more a little stranger having multiple music videos. And then I bought my ES 335 guitar, the semi hollow one, because I was very inspired by James Valentine and others who play semi hollow, like the past Chuck Berry and so on. But this was one of the the key songs I wanted to play on like a semi sort of hollow electric guitar
I mean,
and sort
there
of get
are
that feel.
so many versions of the song by the band, and of course the covers.
Yeah, lots of covers.
Specifically mentioning yours.
Yeah, which is now not online anywhere, so you guys can't find it anywhere. But perhaps there'll be a new one at some point.
Maybe
And
there.
and then just about this song, I mean, it is again that one-sided love, and pretty much I guess knowing you're not ending up with this girl, but she will be loved eventually, because she's got a lot going on for her and you don't.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think a lot of people have probably dived into the lyrics. I don't know if there's anything that you.
No, I think it's the same with most of these songs. It's because, of course, of the name of the song. It's songs about Jane, so it's just for someone. Like all of the songs
Yeah.
are for someone,
Yeah,
and
it's like it's like dedicated to this person. So it's
even though they're commercial songs, they're still, you know, like I dedicate it to you kind of thing.
yeah. Yeah, true. And then moving on from She Will Be Loved, the next song we have is Tangled, which I think is sort of sort of unintentionally hurting someone, sort of being I guess the bad person in that relationship and hurting the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there
In terms
anything
of
that
music, I think it takes a similar turn, such as Shiver.
yeah, like
Right?
going on
Like,
from
yeah,
She Will Be Loved to then Tangled.
yeah,
And the lyrics, I mean, again, just I guess over analyzing a little bit. There is, so he says, you're just an innocent, a helpless victim of a spider's web,
yeah.
and you'd assume he's the spider, but then he says, and I'm an insect. And I guess you could give artistic license that spiders are not insects, but it works in the song. But then he goes on to say, I've done so much wrong, blah blah blah. And yeah, I don't know how I got so tangled up. So
Mhm.
it's I guess you can put some thought in the lyrics, because I don't know necessarily if the analogy that he's the spider and the other person is stuck. I think the idea is both of them are stuck in a spider's web, and a spider is a third party we don't know about. And I guess in trying to escape from that web, he's sort of hurting the other person.
Probably defining a relationship.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting because it's not a sort of a perfect analogy that he uses, but I think might be on purpose. Because all the songs are well written. Like there's a lot of thought that's
True.
gone into the lyrics, even though they are very, you could say like pop.
Yeah.
They're very well written and they're very well composed because they have a very interesting combination of like rock and jazz. And in fact, if you move on to the next song, The Sun, I think is a very interesting mix of like rock, funk, jazz, and bringing all those elements together.
It starts like when I was listening to it. It started with like a classic rock feeling to it, and then it jumps into the pop side, and then goes forward.
Yeah, very interesting, right? And I think again, the song is about, I guess, missing someone you love, and sort of,
Yeah.
like a relationship that didn't really last, but you're glad it happened,
Mm-hmm.
sort of situation, which I think again is relatable, like all the songs for most of the people.
Sure.
But it's just thing. It's just amazing how all of these songs they like all the songs in this album. They sort of have a similar feel. You know, but they're still very different. Like musically, if you try and see, like, a lot of the chord progressions can be different. The instruments are the same, and the instruments sort of more or less sound the same on each track. So
Yeah.
you have that similar feel. Like you can tell this song belongs to this album just by the music. But at the same time, they are a little experimental in terms of how the songs progress or not progress in some cases. And I feel like The Sun is another good example of that sort of interesting
Hmm.
combination of I guess melody with rock that they've got going on.
Yeah. True. True.
And so the song after that we have is Must Get Out. Again, I guess a draining relationship, a little bit about like codependence. And the band, they've said they tried to, I don't know if you've heard the band, The Police. They tried to sort of emulate the Police sound a little bit, which you can see it does come out a little bit. It's kind of laid back in that sense. And the lyrics again, I think very well written, lots of like analogies and like I guess taking
Innuendos.
analogies and turning them around into something unexpected. Like I've been the needle and the thread. It's yeah,
Yeah, I think it starts out like in a very calming and soft kind of music, and then I think it probably catches on to the rhythm of making love, like in with those metaphors and innuendos and you know
yeah,
just wordplay going on, and then
yeah.
there's just
Wordplay is the right word, isn't it? There's a lot of wordplay going on in all these
yeah,
songs.
yeah. I mean, as you said, like it's very well thought of.
Yeah, lots of smart writing going on.
True.
So the next track we have again is one of my favorites from this album, Sunday Morning. Very good track to sort of just drive. Just go on a
On a
drive,
Sunday
put it
morning.
on a Sunday morning. I can't, the amount of times I've done that.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I mean, Sunday morning is like it's catchy, and there's a good use and good balance of like instruments coming in, and how they are harmonious to each other. Like I really like um, you know, the what do we say, like the heavy introduction of piano in this.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very sort of piano melody
Yeah,
based, and it's got that very simple like chord progression. It kind of just repeats over and over and over,
yeah,
and the song keeps going. So it's very sort of, I guess, catchy in a sense.
yeah,
But again, it's one of the more laid back songs. It's more
yeah.
relaxed. It's less aggressive. As some other tracks, I guess, were a bit more aggressive with more sort
It's
of rock
perfect for a
influence.
Sunday rainy morning.
Yeah, yeah. And so apparently this is the song that got them the record deal. This was the one
Oh,
that they heard, the record label, and they were like, "Yep, we'll sign you up." So yeah,
yeah. I think
I'm surprised that if this is a song they got signed for, a lot of other songs don't really sound like Sunday Morning,
yeah,
because they're a lot of the other songs are again a bit harder and more aggressive. Apart from, I'd say She Will Be Loved is probably more laid back as well.
yeah,
But yeah.
true.
And yeah, so the next song we have is Secret. And again, coming off of Sunday Morning, it has a reference, I think, to going on a drive and driving. So I think that's why they kind of got placed next to each other. But the song is very different, and the music is very
True.
different. And I guess
True.
th- this is kind of more about like a one night stand sort of situation. I think the lyrics.
I remember the lyrics going something like, um, slowly you say I'm not there yet. I think there's a line in there,
Yeah, yeah,
and like it just adds some extra uh, personal comments to a dreamy rendezvous maybe.
yeah.
Or,
Exactly. That sort of vibe, isn't it? It's
yeah.
very different from Sunday Morning. It's very much
Oh
like a
yeah.
U-turn in a
Yeah.
sense of like both. I think lyrical content and music again,
True.
but it does follow on quite well. I
True.
do feel, and also Secret. This song also has, I think, like a sort of a repeating simple chord progression, um, but it just sounds so different from the other tracks. And I do feel it's from this point onwards. So like the last sort of four tracks or so, I do feel they're, a bit less. They're sort of lesser known or lesser played than the first half of the album. So this song and the next three songs, I feel like I've heard them less being played at wherever public places or friends listening.
I think people just sort of it's the same because when I had to really go into into the album, I had to sort of listen to a few songs, not for the first time, but I don't remember listening.
You were unfamiliar.
Kinda.
Like some songs you're very familiar with because you've heard them so many times. Yeah, it's the same feeling I got the last one. Like I've heard these, but I can't believe I haven't heard them more because I
think playlists sort of end at Sunday morning. Like that's where
and I guess some of these tracks like She Will Be Loved and Harder to Breathe, and they were so big that they kind of took the attention away from some of these other songs. And there are a lot of songs in this album, so so the next song after this is Through With You, and I think again this song is sort of more about getting like strung along a little bit and then ending the relationship, like someone stringing you along, sort of you're not sure if they're really interested in you or not, but they say they love you and that sort of,
Yeah, so it has a a rock feeling to the song, and with that rock feeling, he's like expressing his heartbreak, I think, and like a loss of trust. There's anger, and that comes out really well with the kind of rock they're going for.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's very interesting combination again because it has that sort of rock and heavy distortion, but it's playing along with this melody which is almost not rock, and then that combination of the rock sound and the melody that they go with, it's a very sort of interesting music choice. Again, I think it's something that is I think with a lot of the tracks here, if you're not a rock fan, I think you'd still enjoy them because just the melody and everything is so good, even though some of them might have heavier distortion.
Right. True.
And I think speaking about sort of distortion, the next song, Not Coming Home, that one has this sick guitar riff I just love. Like great sort of...
Do you know why that song is a live performance?
I don't think it is. I tried to look into it, and I think it's just it's like an artistic choice to make it sound live, but it's not actually a live recording. Because I tried to look at online. I was curious as well. Is it like a demo or why is it live? But I don't think it is live. I think it's part of the track is it's sounding live.
Right.
I think it's an interesting choice. But again, I think the song is just sort of again post breakup about an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the guitar riff is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about handling rejection.
Could be, yeah. And then that takes us to the final track on the album called Sweetest Goodbye, which is, Adam Levine himself has said it's more about like a long distance relationship, and I've got like sort of one of the lines out of the song, how does it feel to know you'll never have to be alone when you get home? So I think there is that element of long distance relationship that once you're back, you're not going to be alone. But there's a lot of sort of longing, one-sided longing, and missing.
It's full of promises, like like if you get into a relationship with me, there'll be so many perks that you get, and it's I think all of the songs are like they don't have a story running in them, like. Every song is its own story.
Yeah.
It's a.
They don't necessarily. It's not necessarily. Even though it's songs about Jane, so they are sort of, I guess, tangentially related to his experience. Yeah. They still have their separate sort of through lines, where one might be, very much about I'm never going to be with this person, and the second song might be more about an abusive relationship, and I guess so. He's taken elements of his experience with, Jane. But then he's molded those experiences into like full songs by themselves, as opposed to having everything just being about Jane, which I think is interesting, considering the album's called Songs About Jane. I
don't know. I haven't gone deep into the lyrics, but I think he sort of explains the physical beauty of Jane in each song in different manner, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking what, if Jane, the person, like when they first heard this album, what was sort of going through her head, like were there things in each song that she's picking out, like, oh yeah, that's true, or, how familiar it was.
even the fangirls Jane with the name Jane be
Name
like,
Jane. Yeah.
you
I mean,
know,
interesting choice of album name as well. You like, some artists very much try to keep it. I mean, obviously, every song is sort of maybe a more personal writing experience, but a lot of sort of artists decide to keep it under the wraps. Like what is it
yeah,
really about? But here it's the name of the album is called "Songs About Jane," so there you have it. There's no doubt if you're the Jane and you knew Adam Levine, Jane
I mean,
Herman
it's
is
out
her
there. I
name.
think I think if you just search the album on Google, it's just the name comes up. Like, Adam Levine wrote about
Yeah,
Jane.
yeah.
What's her name again?
Jane Herman.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I know. But yeah, I think so. Just sort of summarizing that we already kind of are. It's very much songs about Jane. A lot of sort of one-sided love. There's some sort of more breakup or abusive relationship sort of elements in there, which where I find that parallel to the John Mayer album of Room for Squares. That's because we listened to it so recently, and it's I think what I really appreciate about this album is just how similar but at the same time different each song sounds. It's very
exactly.
difficult to put your finger on it, but
Agreed.
they very much have that feel. Like all the songs in this album, they have a similar vibe to it. You can place them in the album sort of musically, but at the same time, a lot of them are very different from each other. They have the same instruments, they have the same type of sounds, but the way those sounds are used, it's very much a band performance. It's like they go on stage, they're using the same sort of guitar, the same drum kit, the same sort of
Yeah.
instruments, and they're just playing one song after the other. So all the differences lie in sort of how the song is arranged and the melody,
True.
as opposed to changing instruments and having some different sort of sounds in there.
True. And I don't think that I would, say that it's a happy or a sad album. It's just like it's good music for sure.
Yeah.
It's a different combination of something because it was their first album.
Well,
And
it's
it was,
also a lot of the songs are also very danceable, even though
yeah, true.
like
I mean, I was
that's
going
another
to
sort
add
of
that. Yeah.
commonality there. That like a lot of
Hmm.
the songs are very sort of danceable in a sense. You could play it at a party, even though it's about a breakup or it's about something a
Right.
bit more sort of depressing. The music and it's so upbeat and sort of the rhythm that you
Hmm.
can actually dance to and still have a good time.
True.
And you got your racy sort of lyrics in there, and like we say, all the wordplay, which are very interesting as well. But
I mean,
that is again, yeah,
you've got like party songs in there. You've got like slow dancing songs in there, and you've also got heartbreak songs in there.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I
similar but different.
think
Yeah, and
yeah.
and I think this really established Maroon 5. Like this is their sound. This is the
Hmm.
type of music they do, and I think one of the things that again that stands out to people, they are sort of edgier in terms of the lyrics and in terms, at least
Hmm.
for the time.
Yeah.
And I think some of the music videos as well. We haven't really spoken about music videos much, but some of the music videos as well bring that out. That sort of that feeling of they're sort of pushing the limit of what's acceptable in the pop rock sort of mainstream pop rock genre at the time, at least.
Right.
So
Agreed.
yeah, so there we have it, folks. Maroon 5 songs about Jane. And yeah, is there any final thoughts you want to add on top of this?
I think the songs that would stand out for me would be "She Will Be Loved," I think, and Sunday
Sunday
Morning.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it's those two, and then I love "This Love Is Great," and I remember "Harder to Breathe." It's one of those songs. Again, back
Mhm.
in the day with the electric guitar, I used to try and play because it's simple to play, but
Yeah.
is there something about it that it's so iconic that when you played it, people would understand what song you're playing. And the same goes to for She Will Be Loved. When you play that riff, people kind
Yeah,
of know,
yeah.
oh, that's the song. I know what I'm listening to. So yeah. Well, thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back soon with another video discussing another album. And one thing I do want to do, and I think we will be doing, is kind of revisiting artists sort of but with later albums to see how their music has perhaps evolved and changed. And I think Maroon
Yeah,
5 is again a good example of how you could sort of point out how the music has evolved over the years. So it'll be
true. Oh,
interesting to sort of revisit these videos when we're doing that. But yeah, thanks for listening. See you guys soon. Bye.